The eyes of NPL Victoria are firmly affixed on Avenger Park. South Melbourne lie in wait in the grand final next Saturday, but today in Parkville we find out who will join them in the big dance. Saturday afternoon semi-final action sees the reigning champions Avondale FC take on the Oakleigh Cannons. Two of the state's perennial postseason powerhouses over the last few years. They have shared each of the last two NPL Victoria championships collectively between them and have a fair share of extra silverware to add to that tally over the last couple of years if you factor in the Premiership and the Doherty Cup. And in truth, there has not been much to separate them over the years, and indeed this season, as we pause here for a moment's silence. A minute's silence respectfully observed by the two sides here at Avenger Park, who have been neck and neck throughout 2024. Second placed Avondale, third placed Oakleigh. They have met 3 times this season, and they each lay claim to 1 win apiece. The only exception, a thrilling 3-3 draw here in round 24. Oakleigh scored 2 goals in the final 10 minutes here at Avenger Park to salvage a point, and if we get a game that is even half as good today, we should be in for a cracker on semi-final Saturday. It's a game that would have felt like a win at the time for Chris Taylor's men, but level pegging after 90 minutes will not do today. And don't be surprised if this is one that does go the distance, extra time, and potentially penalties in the blustery winds of Melbourne's north. They are two sides who have had great seasons. They both are brilliant in defence and attack. Truthfully, both of them are worthy joining South Melbourne for the right to fight for the championship in a week's time, but only one can go on. Which one it'll be is the question we have the privilege of answering today here on NPL Victoria YouTube. Lockie Flanagan and Nick Dabano very excited to sink our teeth into this one. Nick, it is blowing a gale as it has been all week, but these sides very rarely, if ever, disappoint, both in the finals, but in their head-to-head meetings. This should be a real cracker.
Absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, Lockie. It's set up to be a huge, huge semi-final. As you mentioned, neither side has really been able to get sort of the ascendancy on the other throughout the year. I mean, 3 times as they've met. They've all got a win each. There's a draw in there as well. It sets things up perfectly. It's so hard to split these two teams. Avondale have been so good at home this year, and we'll see if that can carry over as the 2 reigning champions in back-to-back years look to get back to the big dance next week.
22 games between these two sides in Victorian football history, and it is Oakleigh who very narrowly edged the ledger 9-8 in favour of Avondale. An Avondale side who have had the benefit of a week's break after that 4-0 win on the final day of the season to the Port Melbourne Sharks. They make 2 changes to their 11 from that game, or just the solitary change rather, I should say. George Mells drops to the bench, and Avondale's all-time leading appearance maker, who is on the ball here, Yitte Towns, returns to the starting lineup. Oakleigh, on the other hand, no rest for the wicket. They beat Heidelberg United in the round of 16 on penalties in midweek and make no changes from that side, which means that the central figure on top there, Christmas tree formation, striker Alex Salmon, who was not available last time they split the points here at Avenger Park, starts up top. And his presence, Nick, one of many stars out there today that loom very, very large on this fixture.
Absolutely. That sort of front duo between him and Joe Guest have had a lot of joy against Avondale over the years, and they're going to be trusted to be the two that, are going to be so key for Oakleigh if they can get back to the grand final. I mean, they've been so key for them for so many years, in particular Joe Guest here at Oakleigh, but Alex Salmon, wherever he's been here in Victoria, whether it's been at Oakleigh or Green Gully or even in WA, he's a player to really keep an eye on. But it is on brand, Lockie, that, Oakleigh, doesn't matter, they went 120 minutes the other night. They're sticking with what works. They're sticking with, that starting 11, no changes. I mean, the only sort of name out of the team sheet is Asar Kasumovic, who's a big loss when you look at their attacking depth, but they've still got, the likes of Munib Adis and Max Macedo on the bench as well, who can provide plenty, even Kingsley Sinclair as attacking options. So plenty at Chris Taylor's disposal if required, and needs to change things up later in the game.
A handful of absentees for Avondale, of course. Blake Carpenter, Yusuf Ahmed, Dylan Jacobi all unavailable, although in truth the latter of those two have been absent for the vast majority of the season, but it is still a star-studded 11 that they named today. And do you think, Nick, that extra rest time compared to Oakleigh maybe advantages them, even if you just put aside the home field advantage?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because, it sort of can work twofold. You can see Oakleigh already in the early going are trying to get on the front foot early and really make the most of, the early stages in this game. But I think the further this game wears on, the fact that Oakleigh have played a lot of football over the last few weeks, not even the fact that they've played 2 games and played 210 minutes of football when you consider they played Dandy City last Saturday in the elimination final. The fact that as well, they played the Doherty Cup final a few weeks ago, they played cup football. Avondale have got the fresh legs. I wonder if that will come into sort of play as this game wears on, as we get in towards the nitty-gritty, even if this game does go beyond the 90.
One is out by one of Avondale's mid-season signings, Daniel Edwards. He's got a tough task against former Avenger Stefan Valentini. 66 appearances for the Avengers, the club that he first arrived in NPL Victoria from. And there's a turnover here, a snapshot, a fantastic save by Tom Manos. Well, Alex Salmon, he did not play the last time these two sides went head-to-head, and he nearly had an instant impact in his return to this matchup.
Brilliantly worked there, and Salmon just showing all his danger. That was a great effort on goal, but Manos did well to react. And as we mentioned, Oakleigh were going to come out of the gates quick and try and put Avondale on the back foot and get the early advantage. And so far, so good from Chris Taylor's side.
Will be Joe Guest. The corner into the wind is over everyone at the back post. Struck by Valentini, though, and it wasn't a bad hit. He has scored 4 times in this fixture, Stefan Valentini. Only once for Oakleigh, and that was before he joined the club, an own goal back in 2019.
I wonder if it kind of works twofold at the moment for Avondale, in the fact that, yes, they have had a lot of rest, but the fact they haven't played a lot of football. How much rest is too much rest? I mean, they're the only team out of the Final 4 that were remaining coming into this weekend that haven't been playing in the Cup. They've been really the only one that have actually had a proper week off from the regular season going into this. Yes, it can advantage you, but if you haven't been playing as much football and you've got a team like Oakleigh who've had a lot of reps over this period of time, perhaps the early going, where they're feeling a little bit of rust, it might work definitely in the Cuttons' favour.
And it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all sort of approach, Nick, is it? There are some sides who prefer to have the extra break and throw all their weight and focus towards the solitary fixture, but there are other sides, which I think Oakleigh definitely are, who just like to keep momentum, keep things rolling. So far it is Oakleigh with the brightest start. Inside the opening 5 minutes, you wouldn't know that they'd played 2 hours of football just a handful of days ago. There's Ollie Kubalay. Well held by Emlyn Wellsmore, who will battle with Adamel Hayek today. McGill picks a pass beautifully for Boyce, who's been fairly advanced so far early doors. As a result, Kerr has been back quickly to cover. Really are 2 A-class 11s on offer today, Nick. even with some absentees for either side. There are stars of this league everywhere you look. It's exactly what you want on semi-final day.
Absolutely. It's an embarrassment of riches available for both teams. And, you know, you mentioned the absentees, but also the players waiting in the wings on the bench. It just goes to show that the majority of the players in their respective squads would probably walk into most starting lineups in this competition. So it's a testament to, you know, the squads that these respective sides have built throughout the year. And whoever gets through, look, Lockie, I think whoever gets into that grand final and plays South Melbourne is a worthy finalist. You know, they've had brilliant seasons. These two sides have been pillars at the top of Victorian football for many, many years, and rightfully so with the performances they put in on the field.
The wind continues to rip its way across the surface here at Avenger Park. It's sort of blowing diagonally across the field, Nick, from right to left. It's not exactly favouring either side particularly, would you say? No, absolutely not. I mean, it's coming right at us here in the scaffold, so let's leave for a sec. Here's Guest in at the near post. Trutt contested. Valentini got up, and it's onto the roof of the net. Yeah. Two good chances for Stefan Valentini.
Absolutely, and you do wonder if set pieces potentially is going to be an avenue, you know, potentially with the ball carrying a little bit more from corners and from crosses. Something to certainly keep a bit of an eye on. But yes, the wind, for those that aren't here, you know, it's not even going to a certain end. Usually we, you know, in sport, you know, when there is a wind, we look at, you know, it's sort of going from end to end, and there's sort of a, to use a footyism, a 5-goal breeze. But here it's really going across the field, which makes things really difficult for players when they're looking to play switches or whatever it might be. If, you know, you're trying to time those passes to perfection when it comes to getting the right sort of weight and velocity on it, it can make things really difficult, especially if the ball sits up or carries that little bit of extra weight.
And if there was no wind to speak of, Nick, it would be absolutely resplendent day for it, at least in the current picture. The sun's shining, just peeked out from behind a cloud.
Remember this time last year, Lockie, when you were here calling the other semi-final at Avondale were in against Melbourne Knights. It was a beautiful spring's day. It was actually, not summer's, not quite summer just yet, but a beautiful September afternoon, and it was sunny, it was nice, there was no wind in sight, but unfortunately today, you know, we've got that strong gale that might blow the clouds across the sun throughout the course of the afternoon.
Might blow the scaffold away here at Avenger Park. It's been strong, but yes, you mentioned that semi-final. It wasn't summer, but it certainly felt like it on the day. Avondale, of course, a penultimate win on course to their first ever championship. Christian Trajewski, the hero on that day, scoring in the 71st minute. We spent a lot of time talking about the Oakleigh Stars who could have a big say on this fixture. Christian Trajewski just jumping out at the page from an Avondale perspective, Nick, on recent form. 7 goals in his last 5 games in NPL Victoria. The first of which of that run came against Oakleigh.
Well, he's been just on a tear in recent weeks since he came back from a broken leg, and we thought his season was over.
Broken ankle.
Broken ankle. But what looked like, you know, a season-ending injury at the time, but to come back, to have the impact he has had in this period of time has just been absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, he shapes as the key figure that could decide this game, you know, especially in that middle of the park, just sitting in behind George Ott. You know, he's such an integral player for Avondale. When you've got him and this man here as well, Sian Cuba, sort of bombing on, it's really tough for defenders to deal with, especially when they're in goal-scoring form.
McGill sets a task for Wellsmore, and across marches Matthew Reid, who uses his body well to get the better of former New Zealand Youth International. How good is it to see Matthew Reid back for Avondale, wearing the captain's armband, playing big games again. He's got defending to do here, though. Salmon, the space opened up for him. And he, I think, was caught, Nick, a bit betwixt and between the shot and the cross there. It was lacking conviction and accuracy towards goal.
Yeah, just sort of caught up in his feet there. It was a bit of an awkward play there from the Avondale defence. You mentioned how good it is to see Matty Reid back, Lockie, and couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, you know, he's missed so much football over the last couple of years, but it's a testament to how good he is and how key he is to this Avondale side, that since he has come back from injury, he has slotted straight back into the heart of defence. He's such a key player, and when they've got him and Aiden Bryce in there, they're a really, really tough team to beat. And they've got no Kalalu Kamara in the starting lineup as well. So, they've got a lot of great options down there at centre-back. We've seen Massimo D'Argenio as well this year slot in there. So they've got a lot of options. We've spoken a lot about embarrassment of riches. Avondale's defensive unit this year. We've seen a lot of players be thrusted into the spotlight because of all their injuries and have to step up under Zoki Markovski. And they've done just that.
Was against Oakleigh, who he made his return from injury against 491 days ago, and there he is clearing away Matthew Reid. Cuba. Avondale haven't been able to muster much in attack. Is this the opening that they've been looking for? It's at the feet now, perhaps for the first time, of Jackson Courtney Perkins, the ex-Shark, trying to pick the gap for George Ott. To be this time around. Gone back well by Yitte Towns. Went one way and then the other, and had the beating of Wellsmore, but not of Cam McGill. The challengers flying through thick and fast in the wind. Hopefully conspire to retrieve possession. Valentini fires one across, flicked on cleverly by Salmon. And Wellsmore delivers early in search of Valentini, but Edwards wraps boot around ball. Repels for an Avondale defence who have been under a fair bit of pressure as we tick past the first 10 minutes. Launched into the air, and a foot race on between Tratt and the New Zealander George Ott. The best Jacob Tratt can do is just prod that one over the line for a throw for the reigning champions. And Nick, Jacob Tratt has been a dominant force since coming into the league, making his debut against South Melbourne. He hasn't often been physically matched in the height department by a striker, but George Ott is giving him a fair run for his money.
Absolutely, there aren't many. I mean, it's really Ott and Sawyer, as you watch there on Sian Kubu, might go into the book for kicking that one into the back of the net after play stop. But yeah, no, I mean, having someone like Jacob Tratt that can go toe-to-toe with someone like Ott. We saw how good Jacob Tratt's been in the Cup, but also as well in that Doherty Cup final, going head-to-head with Harry Sawyer, being able to curtail his influence. But it hasn't just been Jacob Tratt. It's been that man right next to him as well, Jordan Hall, both coming in the mid-season window after being released from Western United and Melbourne City, respectively. And they've been massive for them. They've really stabilised this defence, which had been a bit haphazard.
Trocheski picks the pocket of Kubalay, and Tratt comes across to atone for an error, because he did sell Kubalay a little bit short with the pass after we were just praising his efforts and involvement, the 80-time A-League men's veteran. But both he and Jordan Hall, Nick, as you quite rightly put, have made a massive impact on the back end of this season for Oakleigh.
I think just going back to, I think haphazard, the word that I use there is probably a little bit harsh. I think more a bit makeshift, like they had to sort of throw in a bunch of different centre-back partnerships this year with Eliopoulos, who's on the bench today, missing some time. Hamish Miller coming in and out. They had Connor Hampson slotting in at centre-back, Noah Holmes, Brodie Boyce. They really had to sort of throw whatever they could together this year to try and make something work before Tratt and Hall arrived. But since they've been in, they've just been an ever-present presence in the heart of the fence. It's been a lock and a set, set and forget, to use a bit of Supercoach parlance, and sort of plug in place around them. They've just been brilliant for them.
Full-blooded challenge from Reid. The second ball fell kindly for Kubalay, and now Wellsmore can get on his bike, but it's Reid who stands tall again. Nel Hayek, despite his best efforts, can't prevent that one going out for a cannon's corner. So this is interesting, Nick, because we've seen a few Oakleigh corners into the wind from this right-hand side. Now they're going to be taking it from the left. They're attacking left, where the wind is going to be at the back of Emlyn Wellsmore. So this might make life a little bit more difficult for Tom Mallis.
I wonder if just keeping an eye on Tratt and Hall, if those runs will come in more towards the back post, and they'll try and just let the wind do the job. And who knows, maybe a bit of Amir Abdallah special might be on the other cards today.
Well, it all rests in the delivery of Wellsmore, which, well, it's not quite an Amir Abdallah special. Something altogether different. Valentini battling with his former teammate Yitte Towns. And today's referee, Lockie Keevers, spotting exactly what the Avondale veteran was attempting to point out to him. Old teammate has gotten a little bit too friendly with me. It was very risky from Trajewski. Lovely bounce play between he and Ott, but it comes to naught. Guest sprays that one for Valentini. His first touch is an ambitious one. And Manos more than happy to advance off his line and eat up the space. Another solid season in... He doesn't wear the blue of the Avengers, but in Avengers colours, I'll say. 83 saves this season for Tom Manos.
Just keeping an eye here, Kerr and Courtney Perkins have swapped wings. Lockie, I wonder if maybe that's just to try and open things up a little bit, change the matchups, provide a little bit of unpredictability in that final third.
Already the chess pieces being moved around, the magnets shuffled by Zoran Markovski.
Fascinating stat, Lockie. We're talking about Avondale's sort of injuries this year and having to chop and change throughout the season. Take a guess how many players. We'll come back to it in just a sec.
Kerr couldn't get it through the legs of Ollie Kuble, who slid in violently, and well, maybe Kerr just got a bit of a hot head because he went in firm and unfair in the eyes of Lockie Keevers, bringing down Cam McGill. So the referee gave him a pretty stern talking to. I thought the body language was suggestive of potential card coming the way of Kerr, but nothing doing in the end, just a warning.
So the fun fact, Lockie, Avondale have used 31 players this year. Take a guess how many Oakleigh have used this year.
18.
22.
22. Oh, that was going to be my first guess.
Yes, so 22. So that really is, they've had to blood a lot of the under-23s this year at Avondale with all the injuries they've had to chop and change, and, you know, sort of, they've obviously had players come in the mid-season window, but it just goes to show even though, you know, they finished second, it's been an incredible year.
Oh, great. Oh, Salmon missed it on the first time, couldn't get it on the second. Few questions of a handball, big scramble in the middle. And eventually it's brought dead. An offside flag launched up on the non-grandstand side here at Avenger Park.
Very nervous moment there.
Hugely nervous moment. Had to shuffle the pack a fair bit, Avondale. It certainly impacted them at points in this season. A few shock results here and there.
Well, I think testament to them to still finish second, even after, you know, having to field 31 different players this year. You know, to be able to still come second is an incredible achievement. And they didn't even finish that far off South Melbourne when it was all said and done. So, you know, not to, you know, try to take any polish off what South did. They've had an incredible season, but, you know, Avondale barely had any continuity with a consistent side this year due to all these injuries. So you just wonder, you know, what would this season have looked like if they actually had, you know, a clean bill of health for the entire year?
Well, it could still look like championship success.
Which they won't be complaining about.
No. They have certainly had to fight through the obstacles this season in a very different way to last year. Ott has turned beautifully. He's got Cuba in support. It'll come and set across to Courtney Perkins. Well, it's progress for Avondale. They get the first shot off of their afternoon, but it's easy pickings for Nick Feely, who was caught into action for the first time today.
A lot better there from Avondale. They're starting to build themselves into this contest, looking quite rapid when they've been able to get forward. That early sort of pressure that Oakleigh were putting on Avondale has died off a little bit. I just wonder if that's also a little bit of, you know, Avondale just being able to feel their way into this contest too.
Perkins was nipping at the heels of Brodie Boyce. Lockie Keevers has had to lay down a fair bit of law early doors already. The whistle has had a workout within 20 minutes. It's an interesting position from which to take the free kick for Joe Guest, particularly in the conditions. We know he is a dead ball master. In any fashion this time, it's a little bit shallow. Kubalay keeps it alive. The head tennis continued by Tratt. And now Hampson gets behind it. He can't make much of it in the end, the Englishman. Perhaps lashing out in frustration that his telepathic connection with his present day but also past teammate Joe Guest at Oakleigh and then Curzon Ashton can't continue with this free kick. Reed for El Hayek, who's got a nice patch of green Avenger grass to work with on the right. Ott trying to drop it down for Kerr, and unfortunately couldn't collect his own pass at the other side. Paul, intelligent little stab at the outside of the foot to free up Brodie Boyce. Valentini turned into trouble. Cuba scored in each of the last two fixtures between Oakleigh and Avondale. What you would have thought, Nick, in the 87th minute mark was a winner here at Avenger Park.
What an incredible turn of events in that game. I mean, down 3-1 and being able to rescue it, and from an Oakleigh persuasion to get that 3-3 draw was just absolutely huge. Just goes to show that they can score quickly, Oakleigh. I mean, it might sound a little bit, you know, of course, Nick, of course they can score if they can do that, but it goes to show how dangerous they are when they go forward.
Tratt got the faintest but important of touches to rid it from George Ott. It's another free kick given away by Cam McGill this time, who absolutely no stranger to throwing his body about in this competition.
Hasn't he had a great season? He's had a brilliant second season at Oakleigh.
When you talk about set and forget players, Nick, he has missed a couple of games this season, mostly due to suspension, but he's one of the first names on the team sheet alongside Joe Guest, I would say, for Chris Taylor. Although in truth, it's an 11 that mostly picks itself at this point.
Even seeing now Evelyn Wellsmore playing now as a winger instead of we started the year playing as a fullback. We saw him play in the midfield as well. You know, it's amazing to see just the versatility of some of the players in this team and just how locked and loaded this 11 is. And there's just so much talent everywhere that players can play in a variety of different roles. They've got players waiting in the wings who can come on and do a job. They've got so much talent, the Cannons.
Well, no one would have thought that Brodie Boyce was a right full back at the start of this season, but here he is and has been for a number of weeks. Cuba gets the eyes up. He's always looking to make something happen. Is Sian Cuba. Back on the ball here. Avondale's number 80. Just to pick the gap for Trycheski. Ott across well for Kerr. This is promising stuff. It's Kerr! Flashes a curler past the face. He's trying to protest to Lockie Keevers that it got a touch, but that was certainly the best patch of play we've seen from Avondale today.
Beautiful work there from Kerr to get that back onto his left foot. And we know that with him and Courtney Perkins swapping wings, it'll allow for them to cut inside and really be dangerous when they get in those areas. And Kerr, who knows where the goals are, that was very close. It looked like even for a moment after he got that shot away, and he was starting to wheel away in what looked like celebration. I was expecting the net to ripple. Unfortunate that he wasn't able to get that goal, but boy, hasn't he been one of the great players this season. Really been such a great signing for the Avengers.
13 goal contributions, 9 goals in NPL Victoria this season, his debut year. It has been a shrewd signing for Moraw Youth. Guest floats it over the top for Salmon. It's set up beautifully in the wind. The offside flag was up, but you can still marvel at the pass from one excellent Englishman to another.
It'll be fascinating to see, Lockie, just how many minutes they can get out of Joe Guest today as well. I mean, the last few weeks have been battling an injury, and we've seen in other fixtures, like look at the Doherty Cup final, you look at last week against Heidelberg as well, they didn't push him the distance. They did take him off and they were willing to move things around. You do wonder how many minutes he's got in the legs, or if this has all been part of the strategy to make sure they can get at least 90 out of him today. And if they do go further, whether, it's just sort of a wait and see with, is it a pain management sort of thing? Is it a tolerance thing? It'd be fascinating to see what Chris Taylor does.
Yute Towns. Annabelle Hayek with the trees struggling to stay upright in the background. It's got the freeway right behind us. Behind those trees. Aiden Bryce. Drops one in for Courtney Perkins. And the flag was up. I think Brodie Boyce had already seen it. Courtney Perkins perhaps not. There you go. You needed an indicator. You couldn't hear it through the effects mic already of how significant the gale is at the moment.
It's not quite Tuesday night at Hume City Stadium with the kickoff for FC Melbourne Serbia, where the ball literally went backwards, but that was a close contender.
Definitely up there. Well, Cam McGill has just inadvertently nutmegged his own teammate. They'll have already found themselves in offside positions a few times this afternoon. 26 minutes of football that has really blown by.
Quite literally.
Yeah, well,
Quite
yes,
literally.
that was a pun unintended. Jordan Hall is the goal scorer for Oakleigh in the round of 16 against Heidelberg. His first for the Cannons. Towns. Just to get away from the on-rushing Valentini and McGill. Avondale slowly and surely finding their groove. The home side at Avenger Park. Trent read that one well. Guest. Set a task for Salmon. Aiden Bryce always favoured. Back at the feet of Matthew Reid, who's upended. Almost feels like the wind has found another gear. Avondale have slowly been shifting up the gears in this game so far. It's a lovely pass to find Towns, and his touch to free the feet was excellent. On he goes, Yute Towns, with options right and left. On the right was Trycheski, who pokes it back to his midfield partner. Still Towns. Now it's Kerr. One way, then the other. Kerr into the back grass. Now starting to string it all together. The champions showing their quality bit by bit.
A lot better there from Avondale as they're getting forward and starting to put this Oakleigh defence under pressure with speed, looking to try and get forward with the likes of Kerr and Courtney Perkins getting in behind, but that was good work again. Just keeping an eye here. Looks like there is an Oakleigh player down behind play here. Just trying to, I think it might be Connor Hampson. So Connor Hampson receiving some treatment at the moment, of course. On the bench for the Cannons, they do have Jacob Eliopoulos and Kingsley Sinclair. Kingsley Sinclair has played a lot as a left-back this year, so you do wonder if they do make that move. They do have players available that can slot in, but you think Kingsley Sinclair, given how much football he has played at left-back this year, sort of been that, that find for Oakleigh, coming in as an attacker, but has sort of slotted in as a left-back this year, whether his name will be called.
He's maybe not conditioned for a full hour of football and potentially 30 minutes on top of that. He was only made his injury return on Wednesday against Heidelberg after going down against Sydney FC in the Australia Cup.
Well, Jacob Eliopoulos hasn't played a lot of football recently as well, Lockie. So, you've got two players that, coming off their own respective, or one off an injury. Jacob was away for quite a while. Two players who aren't haven't necessarily had the minutes in the legs recently, but it does look like he'll be all right to continuing. That is Connor Hampson, which is good news. Lockie, I know that we can't really test it here. We don't have grass Matthew Lloyd style to test to see which way the wind's going, but it does feel like the wind has sort of changed direction a little bit. It does feel like it's starting to go towards Avondale's end, so I wonder if maybe that will come into consideration in the next 15 minutes.
Over the top is George Ott. Backing up is Brodie Boyce. Did brilliantly there, the Queenslander, to take it off the toes of Avondale's line leader. On to chase for Stefan Valentini. Oh, Bryce has just nudged him into the fence. It was all fair and legal, but there is not a lot of runoff room here at Avenger Park.
No, it's not Lakeside.
Kubalay. Central for Salmon. Valentini will re-engage his battle with Daniel Edwards. And find support in the form of Boyce. His ball is a searching one, fully committed. Just stooping down and clearing the danger was Aiden Bryce, and a very sporting reaction to the foul conceded by Alex Salmon. Just two competitors going for the ball, nothing malicious about it. Well, that's a risky pass though from Bryce, and Salmon will have another crack at attacking. It's Kubalay cutting it across, has to be for Salmon. And another good block in the Avondale defence. Hampson marching forward. Is this a second win for Oakleigh? Wellsmore prods it in. Danger diverted once again. The central defenders, Bryce and Reid, have already stood tall a few times. Emlyn Wellsmore. Kerr covering back well. Towns kept a cool head. Cuba scoops in the direction of Ott, who is having a merry old scrap with Jacob Tratt.
It's a very good physical battle, Lockie.
Well, yeah, as we were saying earlier, Nick, it's really one of the first times that physically Jacob Tratt has actually had an equal, other than Harrison Sawyer. That's probably the only other time. It was Sawyer on Doherty Cup final day who had the last laugh.
Such a great battle that afternoon, and there's every chance obviously we'll see that battle reignited if the Cannons get up here. But even though that it was South Melbourne who won that game on penalties, I mean, Jacob Tratt really gave Harry Sawyer a difficult game throughout the 120. It wasn't completely one-way traffic, and obviously it did end 0-0 in regulation, but just goes to show how good of a pickup Jacob Tratt has been for Oakleigh, and just being able to stabilise them and going up against these physical strikers that not a lot of centre-backs can really sort of, they haven't really been able to deal with all too well. I mean, Harrison Sawyer's had such a great season, George Ott as well.
Talk about the South Melbourne perspective. Is there a team from these two that, if you're of a South persuasion, you'd prefer to see meet you at the home of the Matildas next Saturday?
Ask me again in about 15 minutes. I need a bit of time to think about that one.
I'll hold you to that.
The beauty is in 15 minutes we'll be off air, so, that's the caveat.
South Melbourne, of course, beating Hume City 1-0 for the fourth time this season, but certainly the hardest they were made to work for it. Extra time last night, thanks to a lovely goal from Max Mikula. Still awaiting the opening here. Salmon is offside again. Valentini has the ball in the back of the net. He's finally scored against Avondale, but it's going to count for naught.
Just going back to your question, I think I have a bit of an answer here. I feel like it is so difficult to pick because South have had such difficult times against both teams this year. I feel like because they got that one over Oakleigh in the Doherty Cup final, they'd like to ride that wave of momentum, knowing that they got the job done in such difficult circumstances, given they did have to go 120 and were down a player for most of that extra time. I think if you had to choose, given who's played a lot more football recently as well, and who might be a little bit more leggy when it comes to that grand final day. I'm not saying this with any disrespect to Oakleigh, but I think South might just prefer playing the Cannons that little bit more than Avondale.
Well, I think whatever direction this game heads, the neutral observer won't be disappointed with who goes through.
Absolutely not.
Both be fantastic clashes in their own right. I mean, Nick, if recent semi-final form over the years is anything to go by, the numbers suggest that it should be Avondale. You were alerting me to the fact that their record in finals outside of the big dance is fantastic.
Well, haven't lost a final that hasn't been a grand final since their first ever NPL Victoria final back in 2017. But guess who it was against?
It was against Oakleigh.
Yep, so in 2017. But since then, you look at their record, 2018, they beat Port Melbourne. They had that famous win against Bentley where they came back from 3-1 down to win that one. 2019, beat the Cannons. Last year, knocked off Melbourne Knights.
Valentini, the space opens up for him. He tries to slip it into the path of Joe Guest. Another fantastic stoppage for this Avondale defence. And the midfield in front of it, they are being opened up, but they are getting back to cover. And now they're heading in the opposite direction. It's Jackson Courtney Perkins for the reigning champions. The reverse pass for Cuba. His first touch takes him wide. Support found in the form of Edwards. And now Trajewski, the semi-final hero in 2023, is twisting and turning and returning the favour to Daniel Edwards, cutting to the middle, and it was open, but Oakleigh able to just get the ball away with any touch. Now this game is opening up. Valentini isolated with Aiden Bryce and leading the Avondale defender on a merry dance, but quite getting the desired contact off the left.
This game has really opened up, as you mentioned, Lockie, and it suits both teams perfectly. We know how good Oakleigh are playing in transition, but Avondale as well when they have those open spaces to get forward. So a little bit more of this, you'd think, in the second half when the stakes really start to rise, when they've got what's on the line for either of these two teams. It's set up beautifully going into the second half, and we don't find that all-important goal before the break.
It's not dissimilar to the game between Knights and Avondale last year. And Avondale had to wait until the 71st minute for Christian Trajewski to break the deadlock. It's a fixture that is rarely short on goals. 15 of their 22 meetings over the journey have had 3 goals or more. And there's some real concern for Jordan Hall here, who's gone down, I believe, after making that pass, the long switch of play. Manos roosts the ball into the afternoon air. And now a half-fit Hall has Cuba chasing him down and just has to launch the ball away. And this would be another big injury problem for Oakleigh if it were to rear its head. I think he has just signalled to Lockie Keevers that he's okay. Perhaps just got his foot caught in the turf. In any case, Avondale continue unperturbed. Trajewski squeaked it through for Kerr, who chips it in invitingly for a couple of blue shirts, but none of them connecting. A goal kick for Oakleigh.
Yeah, good to see Jordan Hall is all good, and all good to continue in this game, because, just for a moment there, a little bit of concern, and he's one of the last players you want to see going down. I mean, if there was any sort of, another indicator of how strong the wind is, that sort of long kick from Thomas Manos, which was just taken that extra mile by the wind. It really tested Jordan Hall shortly after he went down, but he looked good enough to get back and make that clearance before an Avondale player could get on the end of it. But I'll tell you what, if this wind continues going towards that direction, Lockie, it will help certainly for Oakleigh. I mean, you have to wonder, does it come into the thinking at all of Avondale to try and push that little bit more for a goal before the break, and make the most of that change in direction in the wind?
Certainly something to ponder. Cuba, a lovely turn without having to touch the football. Advantage played by Lockie Keevers. Kerr, thwarted by Connor Hampson. El Hayek, back to Kerr. Little game between those two, which Hampson is going to be able to break up. It's funny, Nick, your pun, Hall good. It was an unintentional one from you, but also a pretty good descriptor of his time at Oakleigh. Hall, good.
Good, yes. This Hall is good. I mean, he's basically played every single minute.
He has
played every single minute.
Played every single
so
minute.
Him and Jacob Trade have both played every single minute. That's incredible.
So, since
that is incredible.
Their debut in the back end of the season against South.
They've barely had an off-season. I mean, you know, their A-League sort of campaign comes to an end, and then they have about a month or so off, and then they're right back into it and putting in some really important performances for Oakleigh. But I guess when you look at sort of Hall and Trapp, the amount of minutes that they were playing for their respective A-League sides coming into this, it's not as if that they were starting every week, you know, especially in Jordan Hall's case. He had to really bide his time waiting the wings at Melbourne City. So they'd be quite fresh going into this period. So
that deflection broke the way of Alex Salmon. And now Guest is on the march. It's Joe Guest! It is excellent! That is how you break the deadlock in a semi-final. A super strike from Joe Guest, who just loves a goal against the Avengers.
Does he ever? And what a beautiful strike that was. They had been threatening Oakleigh when they were going forward in those areas, and that is a Joe Guest special. Hit perfectly, taking a nice bounce there at the last moment and right into the bottom corner. That is a huge goal there for Oakleigh. We know how good they are when they're able to settle and have the lead and sort of be able to control things, and that is a massive, massive goal right before the break. Exactly what they needed. I tell you what, Lockie, doesn't Joe Guest love a goal against the Avengers? That is a beautiful finish.
It is unlucky 13 for the season for Avondale. Joe Guest stretches deeper into the double digits. And in his 14th game against Avondale in all competitions, he now has his 9th goal.
That is incredible. 7 of those in the league.
7 in the league. And now 4 in his last 3 games against the reigning champions. He is a man for the big occasion. He's the former, well, he's a current, I guess you never stop becoming a gold medalist. He's just not the incumbent.
He's not the reigning
incumbent gold medalist. Well, that is really now, Nick, the gauntlet thrown down in front of the champions, because they had started to look the better side in this fixture. And you mentioned the importance of maybe trying to give it that extra juice with the wind at your back to search and find the opener, but you can only do so much when Joe Guest can hit a football like that.
Tell you what, from an Oakleigh persuasion though, I think going into half-time, the big question will be, what have they learned from Wednesday? You know, being in this position, leading 1-0, what have they learned out of that to be able to see out this result? Because we know Avondale are going to throw everything at them in the second half, similar to what Heidelberg did, and they really put them under pressure. What have Oakleigh learned from that fixture?
And they double their money in quick succession, the Cannons. Wellsmore's in-swinger is really good. Salmon was lurking with intent. But Manos was able to get convincing contact.
I think conversely, if you're Avondale, Lockie, I don't think it's panic stations just yet. I think they'd back themselves with, you know, the fact that they have played less football, they have more run in the legs. You'd hope for their sake in the second half that they'd be able to, you know, potentially put that to good use. You do think that they'd look to their bench as well and try and get some more fresh legs and put this tired Cannons defence under a lot of pressure as this game wears on. So Oakleigh going to have a big, big mountain to climb to keep this one in their favour, because Avondale, we know that they can score goals and we know that they're going to throw multiple punches their way.
Well, no side scored more than Avondale in 2024. No side has scored more than them in the past 2 seasons. They broke the NPL Victoria record, let's not forget, last year. And Courtney Perkins has returned to the right and is moving nicely. An instant response would go down pretty well at Avenger Park. Not going to find it this time around. El Hayek. Lovely work from Yitte Towns, but Hampson arrives for the Avondale fullback. Nick, Joe Guest has put together another wondrous season for Oakleigh. I mean, he's been wondrous in pretty much all 6 of his seasons with Oakleigh. Of course, a couple of those not complete due to the pandemic, but here is Sian Cuba trying to make life hard. Oakleigh has hit double digits for goals again.
And you'd expect that, you know, when it's all set and done, Lockie, and on gala night, that he'll be right up there yet again for that gold medal.
Yeah, well, I'm actually surprised, if you just look at his pure numbers, Nick, that he hasn't won it again since 2019, because 2022, 12 goals, 11 assists. 2023, only 6 goals, but 18 assists. 18 assists.
Yes.
And this season, 12 goals and 5 assists. Well, 13 now after that strike in the semi-final, which separates the sides here at Avenger Park.
It's quite remarkable. He's absolutely remarkable, the body of work he's put together since he's arrived here at Oakleigh.
Of course, the gold medal in 2019. Not his only individual accolade. He was a Bill Fleming medalist, the media player of the season, I think in 2022.
Yep.
Mike Cockrell medalist, of course,
yep.
Which is a pretty hard award to win.
NPL Victoria champion as well,
Yes.
Doherty Cup champion.
Trajewski. Oss, twisting and turning. What response can the champions muster? There are only 2 minutes of stoppage remaining in the first half, added on by Puya Gadarian, which we've already chewed through one of them, so this may well be the champions' last chance of the opening half. Cuba's delivery is dangerous and tipped away by Feely. Oh, that had to be right from the experienced shot stopper, because that was curling towards goal with some serious menace. And Joe Guest at half-time is Avondale's menace again. It is advantage Oakleigh after 45 minutes played in the NPL Victoria semi-final. It has been a breathless opening stanza at Avenger Park, and it is a moment of quality that we've come to expect of both of these sides over the last few seasons that proves the difference. A 13th goal of the season for Joe Guest, and one of his best. Splits the reigning champions and the would-be grand finalists here in Parkville. Nick, so much still to play for in this fixture. It is Oakleigh in the ascendancy, but how do you see it going in the second 45? Do the champions have what it takes to fight back and return to the grand final for a rematch with South Melbourne?
Absolutely they do, but it's going to be tough. I mean, it's sort of both teams going to be facing their own little battle here. I mean, Avondale chasing the advantage. Oakleigh, two things. What have they learned from Wednesday against Heidelberg when they were in a similar position? Of course, they did score in the second half to take the advantage. And how can they see this game out? You'd think that the toll of playing a lot of football will, you'd think, eventually potentially take a toll on the Cannons players. And Avondale, given they haven't played a lot of football recently, you'd think that they'd be able to potentially use that to good use in the second half. I think, you know, the other thing that, if there's any sort of, I guess, good omen for the neutral that is watching on at home, Lockie, last time these two teams met here in that 3-3 draw, Joe Guest did score the goal just before half-time to put Oakleigh ahead. The game ended 3-3. So if you want to have enough of a sell to stick around and watch the second half, that could be it. But we know Avondale have goals in them. We know Oakleigh can defend the lead. But will that fatigue catch up with them in the second half? And will they be able to hold firm against what we can expect to be a relentless Avengers push?
It may be Oakleigh on course, but it is far from over at Avenger Park. Don't go anywhere. It is Oakleigh who lead it 1-0 at halftime against Avondale in the semi-final. But join us shortly for the second half. Well, it was Oakleigh out first for the second half at Avenger Park, and as things stand, it will be Oakleigh in second to the grand final to join South Melbourne if this scoreline holds out to the full-time whistle. The second semi-final in NPL Victoria has the gauntlet thrown down in the path and in the lap of the reigning champions. Joe Guest's goal the difference, his 49th in 6 seasons of NPL Victoria football. It was a great goal, but the solitary goal. So Avondale have got the work to do, but they only have to do it once to bring this game back to life. And if there is one thing we know this Avondale side do not struggle doing as the heavens open here in Parkville, it is finding the back of the net. The question is, Lucky Flanagan, as I'm rejoined by Nick Dabana, can they do it, Nick?
Of course they can. It's going to be a mountain to climb, but as we spoke about, you know, Oakleigh have played a legs at some point. They'd back themselves to be able to try and use that to their advantage, but Oakleigh right now, they can't afford to sit on this 1-0 lead and, you know, try and soak up the pressure. They have to go for the kill and try and kill this game off. You know, we saw what happened on Wednesday night when they were leading 1-0 against Heidelberg, and they sort of just let Heidelberg build themselves into the game and get that equaliser, and obviously send that game to extra time. The Cannons did come away with the win.
This is a lovely run from Daniel Edwards. The swift response would be well desired, and it might sit here for Cuba. And Courtney Perkins perhaps over-egged the pudding there, trying to cut it square for Sion Cuba. I dare say, Nick, that even if he was caught short by the faint touch that Nick Feely got on the cross, JCP should have gone for glory there.
I was waiting for him to have the shot. I mean, it seems like he went the sort of the unselfish route and try and put on a platter for Cuba.
Oh, beautiful touch from Salmon, who is around Reed with ease. It's Alex Salmon, a great save, but it is instant impact from Kingsley Sinclair. The Cannons with 1 foot in the big dance, and it is Kingsley Sinclair off the bench and onto the score sheet in seconds.
Well, we didn't even have a chance to introduce him, Lockie, because he came on at half-time for Connor Hampson and into the game immediately and having a huge impact. Kingsley Sinclair in the right place at the right time. We spoke about Oakleigh needing to start this second half strong and put Avondale under pressure and try and kill this game off, and that is a huge moment there for Sinclair, coming on, putting it into the back of the net. He slotted in beautifully there on the right wing, and that's a beautiful finish to give Oakleigh the 2-0 advantage. Now it is really a mountain to climb for Avondale to try and get back into this one, as the wind and the rain has really picked up here in Parkville.
It is a bitter blow for Zoran Markovski's side. Is it a fatal blow?
Oh, he's just going back to that JCP chance before, Lockie, and
well, this could change the equation. It's Kerr cutting it back. Trajewski didn't touch it. In truth, we could barely see it. The rain pouring down directly into our eyeballs here at Avenger Park. It's raining, it's pouring. No one is snoring here in Parkville. It's been a great semi-final. Oakleigh in the lead. Avondale looking to answer back. Cuba! And he's a scorer of special goals. And it won't be that time around.
Well, it's been a good response from Avondale straight after goal. They've really got a mountain to climb, as Oakleigh have also now really got the wind to their side as well.
Well, this is Melbourne, folks. It is windy, it's raining, and the sun is out all at once.
An old-fashioned sun shower here in Parkville at the moment.
And apologies for some of the condensation you may see on the drops of Jupiter you might see on the stream at the moment. We'll have to get those cleared as soon as we can. Oh, Kingsley Sinclair, what an impact. He only made his injury return, the New Zealander, on Wednesday night against Heidelberg after missing a couple of weeks. So he hasn't scored too many goals for the Cannons, but he scored some very important ones.
Just to go over that substitution again, it is Sinclair on for Connor Hampson, Lockie, and we saw that he was a little bit ginger towards the end of that first half. Emlyn Wellsmore's slotted in at left back, and Sinclair now on that right-hand side. Valentini now coming over to the left, and being able now to put Wellsmore back in the back four, you know, naturally made a name for himself as a fullback. See how he goes at left back, being able to try and solidify their advantage and see this result out.
Missiled forward in the direction of Salmon. Avondale, our goal scorer extraordinaires, but 2-0 is a mountain to climb against a side that is as defensively set as Oakleigh. We know that Zoran Markovski will not leave anything to chance. Wellsmore judged that one best on the move. Towns. Oh, what footwork. Beautiful from Yete Towns. Trajewski. Already Avondale are throwing their numbers forward. Look how high and wide the fullbacks, how Hayek and Edwards find themselves pinned. They know they need the goals quickly. Courtney Perkins away by Hall. Corner for the hosts.
It's been a good, bright little spell here from Avondale, Lockie. I mean, it's exactly the sort of response they need, especially coming out of the break when they were down by a goal, but now being down by 2. It's a big mountain to climb, but it's not impossible.
If any side can do it, Avondale may well be that side. Can they find a 66th goal for this season? Kerr inviting but collected confidently by Nick Feely, who was outstanding in that game in midweek against Heidelberg United. He made some fingertip saves that I must admit in real time, Nick, I missed, but having watched the game back, he really was outstanding. And he's going to have to be outstanding again, as Oakleigh are going to be under the cosh, you would imagine. Bit of an Avengers assault to follow here in Parkville.
Just wonder if you're Zoran Markovski, you're starting to look towards your bench. Those two names that immediately leap off the page are Stefan Zini and Liston Diaz. We know how much of an impact player Liston Diaz has been in particular. He's sort of made a name for himself for being a super sub, the Alec Forrest medalist this year as well. But Zini as well, who's scored goals by the bucket load and is usually in the starting 11.
They've been caught short here, but luckily not burned by their own mistake. Yete Towns. Another thing we didn't get the chance to mention, Nick, because we were marvelling at the fact that Kingsley Sinclair got on the score sheet within, less than 2 minutes after coming on. That touch from Alex Salmon, just to lift the ball over the top of, I believe it was Matthew Reid who slid in, was, God, that's good stuff. That is silky stuff. You expect nothing less from the joint Golden Boot winner this season. Valentini, could he get in on the act, or could he turn provider? Joe Guest rolling one way and then the other. He hits the deck, and Oakleigh get a free kick in seriously promising territory.
Again, that Oakleigh attack just causing this Avondale defence all sorts of problems when they've been able to get forward and attack him at speed. And Joe Guest again really pushing the pace, and this free kick is in the perfect position for Joe Guest, and he already has one to his name, Lockie. And as we know, if he scores this, he's 50th goal in NPL Victoria, so you know what a weight we've been.
A bat-raising strike. Although Alex Salmon has scored a few free kicks, albeit with the aid of a deflection in recent weeks against Dandenong City in the elimination final. Who will it be, though? It is going to be Alex Salmon! And it was a firm strike. Matched well by Tom Manos. Kubalay to the byline, skipping around a challenge, but Yete Towns in to provide second cover. This is the risk that they're going to be playing with Avondale now, as they will throw the kitchen sink at Oakleigh already, but they will support the risk of leaving space in behind. And speaking of courting risk, Sian Cuba took a risk that didn't pay off just there. He's into the book and the first player of the afternoon to experience that fate.
Yeah, a little bit late there on that challenge on Cam McGilpin. The last thing Avondale can do right now is just get frustrated. I know they're down 2-0. I know that their hopes and dreams of making the grand final, are on the line the next half an hour or so, but they can't afford to let their frustrations get the most of them. There's still time for them to get back into this game. We spoke about what have Oakleigh learned from being in these situations in the last few weeks. When you think about the Doherty Cup final, when they were up a man and they had the chances to bury South Melbourne but just weren't able to. There were some great stops from Harvey Lopez in that game as well. What they learned from the 90 minutes against Heidelberg during the week. And this response in the second half, when they've been able to get forward and just showing that ruthless side to them when they've been able to go forward, is exactly what they were lacking in some of those games. And they're leaving nothing to chance today. It's going to be a very interesting next few minutes. If they can get a third while they've got the ascendancy here, Lockie, they'll be feeling real good about themselves going into the remainder of this game, and they'd all but be in the grand final.
Alex Salmon spears it in. Can only find the feet of Aiden Bryce. And George Ott, the worst enemy at the moment, Avondale. And the other thing, of course, Nick, I know that these are, semi-professional sides and they're at their physical peak right now and they do train regularly. But the gas is going to come off the pedal for Oakleigh eventually.
You'd think so.
And you wouldn't put it past Avondale to be able to find a few goals in quick succession if the Cannons do indeed gas out later on in this game. Guest ball up into the air, and it's easy pickings for Tom Manos.
Just looking at that Avondale bench, Lockie, double change in the offing.
I wonder who might be making way in this fixture.
Is that Joey Katabian?
Yeah, it is Katabian and Stefan Zinni who are going to enter the fray. In place of who, though? That's going to be a fascinating one.
Well, it looks like it's going to be George Ott. He's one of the players that will be coming off. So I wonder if maybe they'll move Stefan Zinni centrally to lead the line, or will it be Joey Katabian winding back the clock, Lockie, and leading the line? Imagine saying around 9 years ago when he was banging in the goals for Bulleen and Melbourne Victory Youth that he'd now be a number 6.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe. His 137th NPL Victoria appearance he's about to make. He scored 27 goals across those games. Most of those came at the front end of his career. He hasn't scored an NPL Victoria goal now in 533 days.
Well, it's going to be Sian Cuba, the other player to come off, Lockie. Wonder if he's on that yellow card, maybe just looking to get him off and not take any risks.
Wow, it's
a big move.
It's a huge call from Zoran Markowski. So they're certainly going more mobile, Nick, in that front line. Maybe even is it a switch of shape here, perhaps?
It looks like they're playing a bit of a... It was like Kerr, I think, is leading the line now, Lockie, and I think it looks like Courtney Perkins and Zinni on the wings, and Towns has moved further forward to sort of offer support. Katabian almost acting as that shield.
Okay. Well, given Christian Trajewski's goal-scoring form, 7 in his last 5 games, this makes sense to try and get him closer to goal, and we know what a technician Joey Katabian can be from deeper in midfield. Brilliant commitment from Jordan Courtney Perkins.
Just looking to my right, Lockie, and seeing, Yusuf Ahmed, who's missing today for Avondale. Boy, wouldn't they love to have him available to throw him right now.
Yeah, it's a bit of an NPL Victoria who's who this afternoon. I've seen a few former Avondale faces. Bon Scott is in the house. Matthew Symes. Pretty sure John Hall is here as well. I don't know why the Keepers Union have decided their convention is going to be here today. We're not hating it. Courtney Perkins was round 1, but not a second in Hall, who I was getting a little bit worried for him as he approached the fence, whether or not he'd be able to stop his momentum in time, but he did. Kerr. Oh, that's a poor touch. Valentini couldn't get the beating of the triple coverage. Good involvement early doors from Katabian. Trycheski. Edwards. They'll switch the locus of the attack. Look how many men are further afield for Stefan Zinni to aim at.
Let's look at those white jerseys, Lockie, just so disciplined.
Yeah, Trycheski jinking into the right, but McGilp covering across cleverly. And well, interestingly, Lockie Keevers put the whistle to mouth, but never blew. Whether or not it was going to be an Oakleigh free kick or he was thinking about paying one for Avondale, not 100% sure.
I have to wonder maybe the other lever that Avondale can pull that they have done this season. I know that Daniel Edwards is very good getting forward from left back, but you do wonder if maybe when they really have to throw caution into the wind, they move Kerr back to left back. Lockie has played a bit of game time there this year. It's not his favourite position, but if they're really going to go for it and they get someone like Liston Diaz on, maybe they're going to have to consider, really throwing caution into the wind and getting someone on like Kerr who could potentially offer a little bit more coming from deep.
Well, they can come back from a long way back against Oakleigh. I'm going to remind you of one of the all-time great NPL Victoria games, Nick. July 27th, 2019. Avondale trailed 3-1 at Jack Edwards Reserve. And managed to bring it back to 3-3, scoring 2 goals in the final 10 minutes. Of course, they had to see the game out, but didn't. Joe Guest scoring the winner in the 93rd, but
I'll give
the evidence is there off the back of that game that they can bring this one back level.
I'll give Avondale also a little bit more of a happier memory. They were down 3-1 in extra time against Bentley Greens and beat them 4-3 in a semi-final as well. So, they can do it. Obviously, very different teams than it was 6 years ago, but
well, we know they have not lost a non-grand finals clash since 2017. Even at this scoreline, be a brave man to bet against Avondale. Edwards. This is going to be the pattern that we're going to see for a while in this game, I would fancy. Courtney Perkins skips round the on-rushing Valentini. Who is going to be the game breaker for the champions? Monte Towns back to Stefan Zinni. There's a stacked block on block of 4 from the Oakleigh defence. The early delivery stopped in its tracks from Daniel Edwards, but won back well by Aiden Bryce. And that was legally won by McGilp. And now Salmon has got his tail up. Alex Salmon could seal it here. And he tried to knock it back to Joe Guest. Surprisingly unselfish from the English striker. When the man on your shoulder is Joe Guest, you can't exactly begrudge him for trying to square it up.
Heard a yell saying shoot the ball next time, and perhaps maybe if he had his time again, he would have had a crack on goal. But I mean, when you've got Joe Guest in that sort of space you mentioned, Lockie, you've got to try and find him. He was an absolute acre if it got to him.
Courtney Perkins didn't get there. Great use of the body by Jacob Tratt. He's just adding more evidence with every game that he has been worth his weight in gold for Chris Taylor's side. Chris Taylor, who will be hoping that he can book his ticket to the grand final and line up what would be a record-extending 4th NPL Victoria Championship. Of course, winning one of those before the finals in 2014, the first year of NPL Victoria football with South Melbourne. I think it'd be his 11th title of his 30 seasons in Victorian football.
Insane. Absolutely crazy. Third of his years having some sort of silverware. Or just over a third. If he does get the job done.
That's the math. Some of them have come all in the same season. It's a treble winner with Dandenong Thunder in 2012.
Against Oakleigh in that grand
Yes,
final.
against Oakleigh. South Melbourne, of course, hopeful of lining up a treble of their own. That is a poor pass, picked off by the former Avenger Valentini. How he would love to have a telling contribution in this game.
It's funny, you mentioned a treble for South Melbourne.
Like win the quadruple.
The quadruple.
The quadruple is still
the
on.
first ever, quadruple is well and truly on the cards.
El Hayek back into a dangerous area, but is going to get a bit of a reprieve through the aid of a free kick. They're just not... They've moved the magnets, Nick. They've brought on some fresh cavalry. But whether it's by Oakleigh's design or something else, they're just not doing enough at the moment, are they?
No, they're not. And I mean, it is, I think, a bit of both. I think Oakleigh's just been really disciplined every time Avondale get forward in numbers. Their shape has just been tremendous, not allowing their sort of dynamic players to get involved and really open this game up. You look at, just again there, Kubalay just forcing Trocheski into a turnover. But just keeping an eye here on Ollie Kubalay, Lockie. He looks a little bit ginger, and Noah Holmes is warming up on that far side. So I do wonder if maybe that's another move that Chris Taylor looks at, thinking about the fact they're leading 2-0, looking ahead potentially to next week, but also the Australia Cup. If maybe it would be wise to maybe make that move.
Guest to Wellsmore. Now Valentini with another opening on the left flank. That's crossed in well, but Reed got there first. A few questions of a handball asked by the Cannons. Guest slides it for Boyce. Now Sinclair, the second half goal scorer, returns the favour wonderfully. This is really good play from the Cannons, and it'll sit for Stefan Valentini, who is robbed of possession by El Hayek. He's going to ride the line. Stayed in play. Kerr now is up against Trapp. Through the legs of Wellsmore. That was good play. He was locked in a tricky area, Kerr. Well, Hayek has lost out.
You spoke about moving the magnets around from an Avondale persuasion, Lockie. I think they've got to do it again. I think they've got to shift things up. They've got to try and provide that little bit more, a little bit of extra spark. They look very stagnant. Like, there's no movement at the moment in front of the ball. Like, the midfielders aren't coming to get into possession. There's no groove in the way they're playing. Still got players like Liston Diaz and even George Mells to potentially bring on. I think they've just got to try and throw a little bit more caution into the wind here.
Kerr. Courtney Perkins. Katavian making an easy on the eye underlapping run. And the back heel wasn't a bad idea. And that ball must have just taken a touch off the knee of Kerr. We know Chris Taylor doesn't make to like too many early substitutions. Bit of a stat for you, Nick. Chris Taylor has made 80 substitutions this season. Do you want to guess how many of them have been made at the 90-minute mark or onwards?
30.
47.
47? Wow. So in second half,
From the 90 onwards, yes.
Sorry for that. Matty Reid just...
It's broken wide for Sinclair. Chopping it back for Guest. Intricate passing from the Cannons, but without an end result. He's a man who keeps the cards up his sleeve, Chris Taylor.
47 of 80 in second half.
I think it might actually be the final 10 minutes of games, but even so, that is...
Even that's unbelievable. So we're not into CT time just yet. We're still got another 12 minutes till then.
He would be one of the only managers this season, Nick, who has gone a full game without making a single sub, which has only happened once. Tratt up but not away. Hall with a more emphatic touch, but Courtney Perkins retrieves for the champions, and the space opens up for Courtney Perkins, and the deflection breaks kindly for Zinni. Haven't seen too much of the Avondale flyer since he's come off the pine, and they need to see more of him. Trocheski. Thread the needle for Zinni. He can. Forced wide by the influence of Brodie Boyce. That's been the story of the last 10 to 20 minutes. Alex Salmon, I think, has just picked himself up a ticket there, Nick.
I'm not too sure what that one was for.
Or was it perhaps directed towards Matthew Reid for, I don't know how bad that...
Not entirely sure about that one, actually. And I saw Lockie Keevers also pointing at Joey Katavian. I don't know if it was a Katavian or Salmon or Reid.
Or was he perhaps pointing to the spot where the incident occurred?
Maybe. I think it was Alex Salmon.
Yeah.
I think it was.
I'm inclined to agree with you. Nick Feely brings us back into play. Wellsmore dealt a bit of a difficult hand. Towns. Clever. Trycheski weaving away from the Oakleigh mark as he was collected through the back of by Stefan Valentini. Didn't look very good from our vantage point, Nick.
Oh, here we go. There's
it is kicking off a little bit here because Stefan Valentini, in the eyes of his former teammates, has perhaps left one in there on Christian Trycheski. Matthew Reid marched across from the centre of defence to give the ex-Avenger a bit of a clip. It is one we'll have to watch back on the replay though, Nick.
Oh yeah, that was very late.
Ooh. There was a bit of a leg left in, and Lockie Keevers is going to be joined by his linesman, Ugur Arslan, on the far side. Daniel Isaac is coming in as well. And this could really change the equation. I'm not sure if it's a red card offence, Nick, but it did look a fraction nasty from Steph Valentini.
Yellow card.
Just a yellow for Stefan Valentini.
I think that's fair.
I think that is the right call as well. Back marches the linesman Daniel Isaac, who was announced earlier this week that he's putting his reffing career to an end this season after 14 years in the Victorian system.
Now,
just say, you know, if it was a player, that would be a remarkable tenure, 14 years in the game. So
he's done a brilliant job as well for his refereeing career too, and the doctor, Daniel Isaac.
A few referees out there today with some interesting lines of employment beyond reffing. Remind me, Lockie Keevers' day job as well.
Air traffic controller, I believe.
On weekends, it's a player traffic controller.
I was going to say that dealing with these strong winds would be nothing new for Lockie Keevers in probably a lot more stressful environments.
Kerr on the move. Trycheski offside. And Christian Trycheski delivering Daniel Isaac one of the last sprays of his refereeing career, not agreeing with the offside call. It looks like we're going to see another two fresh Avondale faces off the pine. Kalalu Kamara and Liston Diaz. So a defender and an attacker on. I wonder if Matthew Reid, who, let's not forget, is still on the return from just a torrid time with injury over the last two seasons. It's just his fifth appearance of 2023 today, his eighth across the past 2 years. I wonder if he might need just a bit of extra rest, or Kamara has played as a fullback as well. I wonder who Liston Diaz will replace though. Either way, the sands of time are really starting to work against the Avengers now. It's still 18 plus stoppage, but this might be a chance. Feely up and away as the sun begins to set behind us, behind the ball at Parkville. McGill, such a reliable customer in the centre of the Cannons midfield. He is again. Sinclair now. Salmon trying to drop it into the lap of Brodie Boyce, who does latch onto it eventually. Now Sinclair. Back to Salmon. Shooting angle not really on, but the crossing angle is. It's poured away by Manos to the top of the box. And down goes Brodie Boyce. And away come the Avengers. Trycheski to Kerr. Just delicately past it to El Hayek, but he's at 6s and 7s with Kerr. Valentini. Still Stefan Valentini, and it's turned in by Salmon. And surely now, the Cannons are off to the big dance. And it is Alex Salmon, a man on fire, who adds another goal to his burgeoning 2024 tally.
I think that's game, set, match, Lockie. You know, Avondale started to get numbers forward. Adam El Hayek looked to join in the attack, and as he got forward, they had to throw caution into the wind, and just as they were caught out in transition, it was beautiful work. It's what Oakleigh do so well, and Alex Salmon was going to make no mistake with that one. There's a classy finish, and Oakleigh can taste it, they can feel it. A rematch against South Melbourne in the decider looks almost like a sure thing now. It fell to the perfect player, and what a week it's been for Oakleigh. They went the distance against Heidelberg. They got the job done. They came here against an Avondale side that were fresh and they were ready for this contest, and they have put them to the sword. And what a year Alex Salmon's having, Lockie. He's probably arguably having his best season here in Victoria. It's a high standard, but he is on fire at the moment.
That is 21 goals now across all competitions. His second season at Oakleigh.
So it looks like they've taken off both Matty Reid and Adam El Hayek. Liston Diaz and Kalu Kamara on during that stoppage.
Diaz is playing as a fullback.
Well, that's the caution to the wind of going for it now.
Have they moved to a 3, perhaps?
Might be a 3. Looks like Courtney Perkins has actually shifted over to...
I think Soren Markowski's potentially gone to a 3.
Potentially, yeah. Edwards playing as the third centre-back. Well, we've got nothing to lose in the next 14 minutes, Lockie. They've got a big mountain to climb, but nothing to lose.
Kerr, if they get one back quickly, maybe, just maybe, the door is ajar. Diaz was coming back from an offside position, and the luck just seems to be going against Avondale today. And the frustrating thing about that third goal, and not just the hole that it leaves them in, is it was one of their own making, Nick, because it was actually a really good piece of play in the lead-up from Avondale, but then El Hayek and Kerr both got confused about who was supposed to be grabbing the ball at the other end of the passing move. And then the Cannons took it from there, and, well, the rest is history. And right before they were about to make those 2 subs to help breathe new life into this game. And they'll make another final change. I believe every outfielder now from the Avondale Pine has been called upon. George Mells, for appearance number 19 of the season, comes on in place of Kerr.
So, Lockie, I mean, at this point, not only in this semi-final, but those obviously who have the split screen going, both teams who are hosting their semi-finals today staring down the barrel of missing the grand final. Heidelberg leading 2-0 against Bulleen at the Burnton Club as well. So, I don't want to say it's been a weekend of upsets or a Saturday of upsets, but certainly at the moment.
Oh, what vision from Kubalay, and Sinclair just couldn't find an opening to fire on goal. He has been brilliant since coming off the bench. And alarmingly for Avondale, the Cannons look more likely to add to their advantage than they do to cop one at the other end. They just need one, Nick. If they get one, maybe it's on. I would say that Oakleigh are all but there. Stranger things have happened in NPL Victoria, though. And they all can score at will. Let's not forget that at 3-1 here at Avenger Park, their last meeting, everything seemed like it was all over when Sian Cuba scored in the 87th minute. Only
for Oakleigh to come back.
Oakleigh to score twice in stoppage time.
This time the shoe's on the other foot. You know, can Avondale do what the Cannons did to them?
That's exactly why, Nick. They just need to get one.
But the thing is, the difference is, though, Oakleigh only had to score 2 to tie it up. Avondale have to score 3. They've got a little bit more time to work with, but still.
They are coming from a long way back in the tail of the field. And here is Trycheski trying to drive Avondale forward. And sort of pushed back there by the marking of Guest.
Well, signal given there by Katavian to get forward.
Yep. And Courtney Perkins around the outside, but didn't produce anything at the other end, and that's a sort of expression of frustration against the body of Nick Feely.
Sort of result that will be leaving quite the bellyache for the Avondale players today when they look back at this, you know, just thinking about what could have been this season.
Trycheski, or Katavian rather. Diaz, has he stayed onside? He has stayed onside. Liston Diaz drops it across, and Zinni should have scored. He had to score. He didn't.
That was the chance there, Lockie. Waiting for the flag to go up against Diaz. I thought for all accounts that he was offside, but that was a beautiful pass in, and it fell to the perfect person, the play that you want it to in Stefan Zinni. And he had to bury that. He really did. And that really just sums up Avondale's afternoon, doesn't it?
How many more chances like that are they going to get? They might get one back very quickly. Liston Diaz, and a crucial intervention from Jacob Tratt again.
From an Oakleigh persuasion, though, Lockie, spoke about taking their foot off the gas. The one thing they can't afford to do is do exactly that right now and just give Avondale an opening at all.
Trycheski cuts it back. Boyce gets a touch. And it's... what's happened here? A goal kick? Jackson Courtney Perkins, I should say, has nearly broken the Calabria Club glass with his bicycle kick attempt.
You would hope by now, with the amount of games they've played here throughout the journey, that glass has been, you know, it's quite strong, you know, considering the amount of times that balls will be smacking against that glass, you know, on a weekly basis.
You may not be able to see them with the sun setting as it is, but there is always one person who watches from that glass. I don't know if it's the same person every time, but it seems to only ever be one person who watches up there, which makes me think it might be the same person every time. I don't know who they are, but they're always there. They're very committed. And they will have prime position if Avondale could spring the most unlikely of comebacks here at Avenger Park. It would be an Avenger-level performance if they could do it, and they are trying more fervently now.
Well, they are essentially Captain America in Endgame and needing all the help that they can get to be able to turn this one around.
Corner taken quickly. Yitte Towns. And now Liston Diaz. Held up by Kubalay. A lot of movement further of the football. And was Trycheski offside? Either way, it's a goal kick, and it all comes to naught. And well, Chris Taylor to make his 81st substitution of the season, and it will, in true Chris Taylor fashion, happen inside the final 10 minutes. Munibaitis come onto the field in place of Stefan Valentini, who of course picked up that card earlier. We didn't see any of Munibaitis in midweek. He was an unused substitute against Heidelberg United, but came off the bench, Nick, against Hajduk last week in the Eliminator to great effect. Got himself on the score sheet late.
We haven't seen much of him in the second half of the season, really. He was a permanent fixture in the starting 11 at the start of the season, but has lost his place in the 11. Preferred option has been Emlyn Wellsmore in recent weeks, but he is such a dynamic player. Arguably the quickest player in NPL Victoria.
He's certainly up there. Quick correction, he didn't make it on the score sheet after coming off the bench, but certainly had a hand in helping Oakleigh to extend their advantage. He's a fast player, but he won't be able to hold that one in. In truth, it's been a while between drinks for Munibaitis. Hasn't scored since the round 6 of the Doherty Cup against Moreland City. Katavian. Swears at the turf in frustration. It has been that sort of day for Avondale. You can just about reach out and touch it now, Oakleigh. Second grand final appearance in 3 seasons.
Well, another decider, whether it's a cup final or a grand final, against South Melbourne as well.
Trajewski looking to feed the feet of Stefan Zinni, and now he does. Stefan Zinni for Avondale, round the keeper to the turf. Goal kick for the Oakleigh Cannons. It was hard to make definitive heads or tails off from this angle, Nick, but it didn't look great on first viewing.
The Avondale bench up in arms. They were hoping for a penalty as well. And see, Lockie Keevers is going to go over and have a word as well. I think it might be, is that to Andy Vargas?
I would say so. It is Andy Vargas who is going to earn himself a yellow card.
The second assistant coach of the weekend to go into the book. We saw Craig Filer go into the book last night for Hume City. You do wonder now, Cam McGill's been in the wars quite a bit in this second half.
Noah Holmes is being prepared to come on alongside Jacob Eliopoulos, so I wonder if he might even take off 2 midfielders here, Chris Taylor, and just go for the insurance policy of an extra central defender. Having said that, Eliopoulos has played in bit part in midfield before.
Yep. Very little, very, very little. But Jordan Hall can also play as a 6 as well. So you wonder if maybe that will be the sort of the swap if they do take both of their midfielders off. So what if they're actually preparing a triple change? Because there's another player sort of lumbering about for the Cannons.
Loitering. Well, what we do know is that the hero of their round of 16 penalty shootout, Noah Holmes, is going to enter the field of play, scoring the 4th and decisive penalty to send them through to the quarterfinals, and it is going to be another midfielder off. Ollie Kubalay replaced by Jacob Eliopoulos.
So, Lockie, I think with 3 minutes, unless there is the miracle of all miracles, we're set for the 4th meeting this year between South Melbourne and Oakleigh, and the second time in a decider. We know what happened in that Doherty Cup final.
Salmon. They can put the exclamation point on it here, but Salmon has run out of real estate.
And you'd have to think that the memory of that Doherty Cup final will be burning for Oakleigh, considering how, you know, they had the numerical advantage. They had so many chances to put South Melbourne away in extra time. There was a bit made of, you know, not making those substitutions when they could have really tried to put that South Melbourne defence under pressure, and then they went down on penalty kicks in the end. But incredibly enough, they could meet again for a 5th time, because they're both still in the Australia Cup, and if they both win their respective quarterfinals, we could see 2 NPL Victoria matchups 5 times this year, because South play Hume in the quarterfinals of the competition. And if South go through and Oakleigh beat MacArthur, it'll happen again.
Well, of course, you've just reminded me that technically speaking, Oakleigh could still do the double. 2 substitutes are going to go blow for blow here. Manos, it was a hot football. There's yet another sign of what a painful day this has been for Avondale.
Yeah, disappointing end to this season, their championship defence, Lockie. I mean, it's been a year that, with all the injuries they've had as well, it's never really felt like we've seen full pelt of Avondale and seen them being able to, you know, really get some consistent football going. And you know, with a consistent starting 11, and you know, today with all the rest they've had compared to their opponents, they've just not been able to get the job done, and Oakleigh have really made the most of their chances back the other way.
Salmon dinks in an inviting ball. Edwards knew he didn't need to clear, so just takes a touch to set Avondale on their way. I don't think there's any reason, Nick, to suggest there'll be a lot of stoppage time added on here, although I did just see the number 8 flash up on Puya Gadirian's board.
I don't know if that's just residual from Cam McGill coming off.
But it was in green text. So
but they did make a mistake with the numbers before that as well.
That must be the explanation then.
Unless maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did keep it up because there is going to be 8 minutes at a time.
No, it'll be 4 minutes. I've just seen the update from the 4th official. Kalalu Kamara. It'll be a messianic level achievement if Avondale could force extra time. It's looking more likely that Oakleigh will force a 4th. And there's a bit of miscommunication. Oh, and I thought that Alex Salmon had just scored an absolutely spellbinding little moment of invention there, just prodding the ball towards goal, but not to be. He may still get his chance, though. He really hasn't given up the ghost of adding another to his name. And that's going to stay in play for Kingsley Sinclair. Luck is a fortune for Oakleigh. Just about stick the date in their calendar. Next Saturday at the home of the Matildas. And they're all but there as we enter stoppage time. And now they'll just look to chew it up. Bryce. It's a bit of a nothing ball.
Doesn't it feel like a bit of deja vu at the moment, Lockie, from 2022 for Oakleigh? They've come from 3rd. They lost the Doherty Cup final. They've gone on an Australia Cup run. They do play MacArthur again. They did beat Sydney FC in 2022, and now they're going to play South Melbourne again.
It would be a bit of a sour note to proceedings if they were to lose a player to injury. Emlyn Wellsmore looks to be in some discomfort as the physio has been called onto the field to tend to him.
But it does, Lockie, it does feel like, I mean, looking at it from the sort of the omens perspective, if that's something you do believe in, there's a lot of things going in Oakleigh's way that does remind them of a couple of years ago. You know, so another rematch against South Melbourne in the grand final. Remember what happened on that evening at Olympic Village. Obviously now we're going to Bundoora just up the road. It's going to be such a fascinating matchup to see those two sides lock horns again for the NPL Victoria Championship.
And of course, from a South Melbourne perspective, I still think, even though they have gotten the monkey off the back and beaten Oakleigh in a high-stakes knockout game, that 2022 grand final, 5-0 in the wet at Olympic Village, it's got to still burn.
But even last year as well, Lockie, I mean, the 4-0 loss to Avondale, you know, yes, they did get it done in the Doherty Cup. Now it's getting done in the grand final. You know, getting that championship, it's something that South Melbourne and Esteban Quintas will be hoping to lock up. I mean, locking up what would be a Victorian treble, then also keeping their hopes alive of winning an Australian quadruple on top of that.
Holmes. Guest. Lobs it down the line for Salmon. Adus. Katabian turned into a bit of trouble and has coughed it up to Alex Salmon. There are still plenty of Oakleigh numbers forward. And it's still Salmon. Alex Salmon blocked en route. Trycheski looks to activate the afterburners of Liston Diaz. Tratt almost inviting the contact. And winning the free kick. Everything coming up Oakleigh.
Tratt, it almost seemed like, you know, when you're in a bit of a choppy beach and you're waiting for the wave to come, and it's like, do I just cop it? Do I go through it?
You just got to crash through it.
And that's what Jacob Tratt did, and he held his ground beautifully. Liston Diaz was the wave. Does look like another change, though, for Oakleigh. And I think it's going to be Max Bassetto coming on for the final couple of minutes.
It will be the Western United product, joining his former and present teammate Noah Holmes off the pine. Of course, I say Western United product. He spent time in their youth academy. He's really a Moreland City boy through and through. That's where he got his start, and he will get his go in this game in the final few minutes in place of Emlyn Wellsmore.
We haven't seen a lot of Max Macedo in an Oakleigh Cannons jersey, but he did score the goal which got them through to the Doherty Cup final against FC Melbourne Serbia. So he does have goals in him, though. He's a very, very talented player. Certainly someone to keep an eye on, who could still play a decisive role next week or in the Australia Cup as well, should his number be called. But
Lockie Kivers has checked his watch a couple of times.
Cannons season rolls on for another week and a bit more than that, and Avondale, Lockie, it's going to come to a very, very sour end for them.
Beidous driving to the byline. Mini Beidous catching practice for Tom Manos. Distributed quickly to Yitte Towns. The Cannons fans are starting to launch up the fake whistles. They know their side is close. All the way, they are all but there. Lockie Kivers' whistle is all that stands in their way now. Oakleigh continue to wait for the referee's signal. Or is there an Avondale consolation in the offing? There's an Avondale corner in the offing. Will matter for little, but Mills will take the delivery anyway. And it comes away by Oakleigh. And the whistle has to be close. Holmes hits the deck. Oakleigh have a free kick. So it's off. Mr. Diaz. He just received his marching orders.
Yeah, it's a second yellow.
Wow. That is a bizarre end to this game. Liston Diaz's day comes to an end. 2 yellows off the pine, and so he'll miss game 1 of season 2025. And that is a moment.
That just sums up the afternoon.
It is microcosmic of what a dastardly day it's been for Avondale. As Jacob Tratt will send the ball into the air again against the 10-men Avondale, who cannot put up any more of a fight. Oakleigh Cannons are back in the big dance after a season on the sidelines. Avondale's title defence ends with a bit of a whimper. In truth, they fall at the first hurdle in finals in the face of a 3-0 Oakleigh onslaught. It started with a moment of Cannons class in the first half. Joe Guest scoring his 49th NPL Victoria goal to set Oakleigh on their way. And just as though it seemed that we might be set for a salvage performance from Avondale, it was Kingsley Sinclair off the bench and on the score sheet within 120 seconds of coming off the park. It put Oakleigh into a commanding position, one which they only extended through the ever-present and this season ever-scoring Alex Salmon. An 18th goal of the NPL Victoria campaign. The exclamation point on an emphatically booked ticket from Oakleigh to the grand final. And it all awaits against South Melbourne next Saturday.
As you said, Lockie, it was emphatic, it was clinical, is what we have come to learn from Oakleigh. When they take their chances, they bury them, and that was a very, very impressive result. You know, going 120 minutes only a few days before this against an Avondale side that have been able to wait in the wings, as Oakleigh have played in the Cup, in the elimination final against Andy City as well. Coming here to Avenger Park, where not many sides, Lockie, have come here and come away with a win. I mean, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think only Green Gully were the only team to beat them here this season. the two sides that they actually fell to defeat 2 years. Sorry about that, but 2 losses they've had here. But even before that, they hadn't tasted defeat much here at all. And they come on the road, they get the job done, and they book a rematch against South Melbourne, a Doherty Cup final rematch, a 2022 grand final rematch. And they would feel like they want to set the script right after that really disappointing Doherty Cup final, Lockie, and they'd be hoping to take home some silverware in what's already been a great year for the Cannons, but give them something after some near misses already this year.
Well, 2 years ago, the Oakleigh Cannons under Chris Taylor finished 3rd in the regular season. They went deep in the Australia Cup and they lost in the Doherty Cup final to Bentley Greens, only to go on and smack South Melbourne in the big dance. Is history set to repeat 2 years on? That's the question we are going to get to answer next Saturday at the home of the Matildas. Make sure you're there in Bundoora for what should be a cracking day of action, set up by a scintillating Oakleigh performance here at Avenger Park. A statement win on the road to the championship game. The full-time score at Avenger Park: Avondale 0, Oakleigh Cannons 3.